No, they'll be seated.
Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Pastor Sam Yoon, and I want to welcome all of you to this place where broken hearts have gathered. We all come carrying our own sorrows and sadness, and perhaps a bit of chaos and confusion, and certainly a deep sense of void left by the loss of Fred Hansen, beloved brother, uncle, and friend, obviously, to many. In this very special hour of sharing, I pray that all that discourages us will be displaced and replaced by the memories that encourages us and gives us hope. And in everything that is said and done here, may we remember, especially today, that we are not alone. We have each other, and we have the God who is called love here also with us to bless us and console us. And so I want to invite Carl Hansen, Fred's brother, to offer a word of welcome.
Thank you, Sam. I wrote it down because probably I wouldn't be able to do it otherwise. So welcome indeed. On behalf of the entire Hansen family, welcome to this moment together. And I want to say thanks, by the way, to Sam and Dirk and Cindy and all the people. You're going to see all kinds of people that have helped throughout the day today, and they're just wonderful people. We're here today to remember my brother Fred and to celebrate his wonderful life. We're very, very honored by your presence, and we thank all of you for being with us. As many of you know, the Hansen family is quite small. In fact, you can pretty much count the remaining clan on just one hand. While that one hand might represent the remaining Hansen bloodline, the fact is, as you can see and as you will hear by witness today, the Hansen family, in fact, is quite large. I can do this. Fred almost single-handedly extended the love and caring that a family should be known for. I was amazed by the fact that over 24 of you shared time with him in just the past month prior to his death. Fred reached out to all of his friends and he saw him. He didn't promise, oh yeah, let's get together and have lunch. No, he had lunch, and he had dinner, and he had a beer. And he went to the airport and picked you up. He did those things that we talk about too often. Yesterday, I was asked by a relative stranger, who was your brother Fred? Well, I thought of many wonderful attributes, and I thought I'd just share a few, if you don't mind. Here in Mexico, he was El Jefe, the boss. Fred was always clear about his expectations with his subordinates at the office. He didn't mince words. If you weren't performing as expected, he ultimately would let you know. As a side note, you will see from the decorations in Creekside as we go across the street here that Fred indeed loved Mexico. He owned 3 properties there, and last month he made an offer on a 4th piece of property there in Puerto Vallarta. He loved the simple and honest straightforwardness of the people there in his community. In fact, tomorrow morning, Eric, Jenny, AJ, and myself will fly to Mexico to further celebrate Fred's life with his community there in Puerto Vallarta. Speaking of flying, many of you know that Fred loved to fly. He loved the freedom to go wherever he wanted and the sights that you can only see and feel in the air. I'd guess that probably a couple of dozen of you have been in the air with Fred, and most likely you understand the love that he had for that freedom. I could go on, but perhaps I should close by simply saying that Fred was a great brother and uncle. He would do anything for anyone, and he often did. He was the constant champion of the underdog. He was always willing to give a hand up to those willing to take responsibility for their own destiny. And then finally, as a big brother, he would often threaten to beat the crap out of me. That big arm would come up, but he never let it go. He never once did that. But some of us lived under that fear. But the fact of the matter is he took great care of me and many people in our family, on a daily basis, and he never asked or expected for anything in return for his constant love and his constant care. And I miss him. So I've asked my friend Bobby Joe Valentine to sing a tune that harkens back to the days of my youth with Fred and the troubled home that Fred and I both ultimately escaped from. And this is a song that is known as Fly. By the way, the picture here is taken from Fred's deck at his home. AJ took it last month of a sunset. Many of you have perhaps been there. Actually, most of you haven't been to Fred's house. It's so far away that, but it's a beautiful place. Gentlemen, thank you for being here with us.
This is my room and it's robin's egg blue and it's got a few cracks in the ceiling. This is my street where the Minutemen meet and Dad says that I'll never be leaving. I'm 10 years old but I know how to smoke and the drinks help to cure the bad feelings. This is my home and the sticks and the stones are made up of the darkest of things. But in my dreams I can fly and I soar and my feet touch the sky and it seems I can go anywhere if I try and the world's not so dark when the clouds make it white. If there's no hope, tell me why. In my dreams I can fly. Here come the tears and I cover my ears and I swear I can hear my own heart beat. When they stop fighting to turn out the lights, I pretend that I'm already sleeping. After the violence, alone in the silence, just me and the secret I'm keeping. My dad tells me I'm not worth anything, and I've almost admitted defeat. But in my dreams, I can fly and I soar, and my feet touch the sky, and it seems I can go anywhere if I try, and the world's not so dark when the clouds make it white. If there's no hope, tell me why. In my dreams I can fly. This is my room and it's robin's egg blue and it's got a few cracks in the ceiling. This is my home and the sticks and the stones are made up of the darkest of things. After the violence, alone in the silence, just me and this secret I'm keeping. My dad tells me I'm not worth anything, and I've almost admitted it, but in my dreams I can fly and I soar, and my feet touch the sky, and it seems I can go anywhere if I try, and the world's not so dark when the clouds make it white. If there's no hope, tell me why. In my dreams I can fly, and my feet touch the sky, and it seems I can go anywhere if I try, and the world's not so dark when the clouds make it white. If there's no hope, tell me why. In my dreams I can fly. If there's no hope, tell me why. In my dreams I can fly. If there's no hope, tell me why. In my dreams I can fly.
Thank you so much, Bobby Joe. There is hope, because even in our dreams, we can fly. Now, most of you in this room, perhaps all of you in this room, know Fred a heck of a lot better than I do. But I met Fred a handful of times, I think about 5 or so times, and every time I met him, he acknowledged me. I never saw the big hand being raised, I guess maybe because I was pastor. Maybe you've seen that. But when Carl asked me to help with the service and officiate over this celebration of life, Carl made it very clear that the things that I learned in seminary might not count here. In seminary, I learned how to talk about the book of life and the Bible and so forth, and Carl said, this is going to be tricky because you're going to need to learn how to read from the book of Fred. And so I went to seminary again for a couple of weeks, talking with Carl and Eric, and thinking about this life that has affected and blessed so many, a life that has taught people to dream, to fly, and to have hope. Some of the things that I learned about the book of Fred, there's these Fredisms that are written there. One you may know very well for yourselves, that's written in the book of Fred. There's a right way, there's a wrong way, and there's Fred's way, right? And a little bit more seriously, as Carl alluded to earlier, there's a chapter in the book of Fred that we might simply call the underdog. It is a chapter that's dedicated to this idea that everybody should be given a chance. And of course, there's a sequel to that chapter that follows that might be called Don't Blow It, though. And that was Fred. But he was an underdog. Fred was an underdog himself. He worked hard, rose up from below, slayed some major giants along the way. And so as I have come to learn about his life and who he is, what I've come to know and learn is that whenever he sees someone else facing a giant, others facing giants themselves, he couldn't help but lend a helping hand, offer a chance, and do a little rooting. You can do it. Work hard. Put yourself into it. Keep going. And don't blow it. And there is a reading from an ancient text that I want to share with you that goes back perhaps 3,000 years. And it's written by another underdog. And his name was David. And he wrote these words. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me and the light become night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like the day, for the darkness is as light to you. Again, this was written by someone many, many years ago. Someone who was considered an underdog, who faced a literal giant, but taught many people thereafter to be in the spirit of never giving up hope, and facing those giants of life. I find it appropriate to share this text and this theme of the underdog with you, especially today, because 2 Mondays ago, I was sitting with the pastoral staff here in this church, and I was sharing with them about an article that I had read about Malcolm Gladwell, who wrote the book Outliers, and he came out with a new book called David and Goliath. He's also the guy that wrote about The Tipping Point, for those of you who might be familiar with his work. And in the midst of talking about Goliaths and giants and being the underdog and this culture of rising up from the ashes, I got a call from Carl. And I texted back to him, I'm in a meeting, I'll call you back in 5 minutes, which I did. And he wanted to tell me something about Fred that he thought I should know. And it's amazing. The thing that he shared with me said, Sam, you need to know this about Fred. He was always for the underdog. In the very moment that I was sharing this with the pastors, Carl calls me to remind me of this. And it's a great thing to be reminded of, because when we think about an individual that we lose, and especially way too early, we say, oh man, it's sad. Feels like a great loss, certainly a big void. And maybe we might say that a life cut short is a life that's kind of wasted, but it's not, even in the short life. Fred, in the spirit of rooting for so many other people, his life was used and was a blessing to many. And the testimony is seated here in this room. And I want to give you all an opportunity to share how Fred has blessed your life, how this fighter for and of the underdogs have blessed you and touched your heart. And we're going to start by hearing from 3 specific individuals. I want to invite Eric Hansen, Fred's nephew, Jason Thurber, Fred's godson, and Jeff Liming, longtime friend of Fred's, to come and share their personal witness with us.
Thank you, Sam. I always looked up to Fred. I even bet him once that I'd grow to be taller than him. That didn't happen. If it had, I may have been better at football. And the pictures Fred took of me then, I may have had a few more victories in them. But, you know, we hear about Fred supporting the underdog, being there for the underdog, and he was. And he was even there to support me, too. I definitely came up with a lot more opportunity than Fred had. He watched me growing up and kept reminding me how spoiled I was and how I needed to come up to his house for a weekend. I probably should have. One of the biggest lessons from this whole thing for me is that time with those that you love is not certain. There were a lot of things that I assumed that I'd be able to do with Fred, starting with visiting him in Mexico for Thanksgiving this year. And unfortunately, I'm not going to have that chance. So I hope that all of us here and all of those who knew Fred can take that message, apply it with those that are close to you, where you have the same feelings. So we're going to get to that. We're going to do that. Go out there and do it. Because as Carl said, that's what Fred did. You know, Fred would come by my desk and say, let's go to lunch today. And I'd be too busy. And eventually I would. But if I had put myself out there for him, he was willing to participate with me at all times. So I was always really grateful for that. A few more notes. I'm going to miss the nephew annihilator. So Carl talks about that hand that was big up here. Well, Fred, literally, it was the nephew annihilator, and it was friendly. It was friendly, but for those of you that work at Vita, you've probably seen it happen a few times. Come in and grab me like this, and then just start kind of softly like this, just kind of beating on my shoulder, reminding me that the nephew needed to get annihilated every now and then. I'm sure as heck gonna miss that too. So, a million more memories of Fred. You know, he was always there for me. He was always at every family event taking pictures. He took pictures for my sports teams, as I alluded to earlier, and literally every Monday at high school, all the kids would be on the internet looking at fredsphotos.org, trying to find if they were in Fred's pictures. And he ended up taking pictures for teams I wasn't even on, because the kids would come up to him and say, "Hey, Fred, will you come take a picture at our game? We have a really important game coming up." And Fred was there. Fred would give his time because he knew it meant that much to those kids. So at our reception, we will have a little slideshow. You're going to see some images in there that may not make that much sense. Why is this up here for Fred? It's because Fred took that picture. It's because Fred was participating with those people. So hope you guys can take that memory of Fred and really apply it to those around you as best you can. Thanks.
I wrote mine down as well. No way I'd make it through otherwise. And Jason, and Fred was my godfather. And it's still not really real to me that Fred's not here anymore. And it's one of those things that's such a big loss that it's hard to come to terms with all at once. And I keep bumping into it when I'm thinking about something else. And I think that is how I'm going to come to terms with it, is just thinking, I'm not going to go see Fred for dinner. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to be able to call him and ask him for advice. And I think part of what makes this feel so unreal, the loss of Fred, is Fred was so there. Part of what he was, and Carl talked about it and Eric talked about it. He had a sense of there-ness, and to have someone like that, be gone makes it especially hard to come to terms with. He was someone, he was a man who made things and he did things. He had adventures and he had stories, and you have real memories about your involvement with him. And he thought of things he wanted to do. He thought of the way he wanted the world to be, and he made it happen. And he worked to make his dreams real. And something he gave to me, and something clearly he gave to other people, was that same positive pressure, that same assurance that you can make the things you want real. And here are the steps you take, and here's my advice. So when I learned that Fred had died, I sat down and I listed out some of my memories of him, wanting to immediately think of what are these wonderful things that I remember about Fred. We did so many things together. We talked about so many things. And having someone in your life that you have such distinct and special memories about is wonderful. And I think with so many tendency to have very shallow relationships and not see the people we love and not be involved in their lives, to look back and think, we did that, we talked about that, we met for that, is wonderful. And I just wanted to share a few particular memories. A long time ago, Fred taught me how to hang sheetrock, and so I got to experience there's the right way and there's the wrong way. Maybe you need to keep doing this until it's right. And it's one of those skills you never admit to having, but I did learn it. Fred helped me move to LA when I moved down there for the summer, and we packed up his truck and we hopped on the road at 6 o'clock at night and found out that he had a CD stuck in his CD player. And so we listened to Erasure Pop for 5 hours on the way down to LA. So I have fond memories of that. That is a CD you can listen to for 5 hours. So Fred flew over and visited me when I was in England, and we traveled around Europe together, and there are a lot of fun memories of that. But I think one of the unusual memories I had is we traveled through Spain, and Spain was wonderful, and we got into Italy, and everyone speaks so highly of visiting Italy, and we showed up on a bank holiday a national holiday. The banks are closed. We don't speak any Italian. Everyone's visiting the city, and nobody speaks any English. And so we spent about 2 days trying to get money from the ATM and make our way around Italy, and then rapidly fled to Austria, which was a much easier place to visit. And just having travel memories with Fred was wonderful. And then, sharing his love of flying and going and flying gliders and doing things like that. These are just very special memories I have with Fred. And I feel very lucky that the Thurbers and the Hansens discovered each other back in Los Altos all those years ago. They chose to remain close and be close, and that as a result, I had a wonderful godfather and a friend, someone who I had in my life. And I think, again, the hard part is that all the good that was there with Fred in my life, feels like there's a hole now, and that the world feels like a worse place without Fred in it. But one of the things I think about is that one of the only ways we're ever really alive, both when we're alive and after we die, is the way we affect other people, the way we live on in their hearts and their minds, the way we exist out there in the world with the people we affect. And clearly that's something that Fred had a huge life far beyond his own existence. That there are many people here who he touched and whose lives he influenced in a positive way. And for me, even though Fred's no longer with us, he'll have a huge place in my life, in my heart, and in my thoughts, and will always be a part of my life. So those were the memories I wanted to share.
Okay, it's hanky check time there, Carl. We had a little conversation outside. We, interestingly enough, both brought hankies. I'm Jeff Liming. I'm here today with my wife, Jan, and my 2 boys, John and David. Our family has a long and memorable history with Fred. I'd say in many ways, Fred is family. And thanks, Carl, for inviting me to come today. It's an honor and a privilege to be here to speak of Fred. Nearly 40 years ago, in 1974, I was a freshman at San Jose State. One of the interim spring break science courses offered was a week-long field studies class in Death Valley. I'd never been there, barely heard of it, but it sounded like a great adventure, and I signed up. And that's where I met Fred Hansen, among 200 college students at a remote mining camp in Death Valley. After 40 years of explorations with Fred in the desert and many other places, I'm really glad I signed up for that class. Today, I'd like to recall with you 3 of the many qualities I saw in Fred throughout our 40-year friendship. The first recalls kindness he often showed. Frequent kindnesses, but also I'd call Fred's random acts of kindness. The second is Fred's character was his caring spirit, but then followed by action. The third quality Fred demonstrated to me over the years was his loyalty in our friendship. Loyalty to me and my family over many years, which was sometimes strained, but never broken. Fred's random acts of kindness are something many of us were recipients of. Unexpected, thoughtful, often fun. As an example, last summer, Fred flew his plane up for a visit with us in Oregon. A friend of mine who's working on his pilot's license and I met Fred at the airport, where Fred spent quite a bit of time reviewing flight operations with Sean and talking all those other things pilots talk about. Fred was very proud of his airplane and a very good teacher. He was also very serious about helping other student pilots learn. Subsequently, and unplanned, and as a surprise to me, the 2 of them took off for touch and goes and a Central Oregon flying tour. I took my dog for a long walk. The next day on the way to the airport, Fred called Sean and asked if he'd like to have a return trip to the Bay Area and return on a commercial flight that evening. We'll figure the return on the way down, he said. They took off 40 minutes later. I went home, and I know Fred landed several extra times on the way down so Sean could practice. This story already includes much kindness on Fred's part, but in addition to a full day of flying instruction free lunch, airport drop-off. Fred purchased Sean's return ticket, unexpected, with his air miles. And that was Fred and his smartphone hard at work. The next day when Sean told me excitedly about his adventure, I wasn't especially surprised because that random act of kindness had Fred's signature all over it. Last November, a few weeks before Thanksgiving, I got a call from each of my sons telling me that they'd been invited by Fred to his place in Puerto Vallarta for the holiday. Sounded like a nice place to spend Thanksgiving. David was in school in New York. John was in Oregon. No worries, according to Fred. So both sons flew into tropical Puerto Vallarta for Thanksgiving, and Fred treated them to a great time. What a pleasant surprise for both. What a great memory. That phone call from Fred was quick and to the point. Would you like to come to Mexico for Thanksgiving? And then Fred planned and executed the rest. I know many of you have experienced the kindness of Fred. Maybe you've even experienced one of his random acts of kindness. Secondly, Fred was a very caring man. Many of you recall Fred and Carl's mom, Martha. My memory of her is of an inspiring, positive, determined, and energetic woman, a very good listener. And she loved her sons. When Martha's health deteriorated to the point where she needed care, Carl and Fred met the challenge with love, compassion, and then action. I recall many times listening to Fred carefully and thoughtfully describe the best options for his mom as she progressed in care facilities and then slowly failed. He visited with her constantly and provided for her needs. What tremendous caring and love in action Fred demonstrated for his mom. He wasn't just a talker, but a doer when it came to caring for his mother and for many other challenges and opportunities in his life. And he acted quickly and decisively. Fred's taken the time and opportunity to care for my wife and my boys in times of need. Like his mom, Fred was a very good listener, and support came quickly with his typical Fred response of, yeah, when the request for help was made. You've heard it. Fred's probably responded in agreement to you with that. So, Fred, this traffic is unbelievable. Do you really think we're going to make it to the airport in time for my flight? Yeah. Fred, after reviewing this business deal, do you think Jan and I should really put ourselves and hawk up to our eyebrows? Yeah. Last summer, I heard Fred had been at lunch with my boys. Interesting, because he didn't tell me he was traveling to Oregon. I didn't get a lunch invitation because he'd come up to care for them. I know many of you have been cared for by Fred at some time, or maybe many times. Fred was a loyal friend. After college, I entered into a variety of work for a number of years. Fred was always there with support and also with constructive criticism. He had good business sense, and his opinion and advice was frequently very, very helpful. My family relocated to Central Oregon years ago after selling a business in an industry that Fred invited me into. That invitation happened like this. After I had just broken ranks with previous business partners and was for the first time in my life at home during a work week. The phone rings, and it's Fred calling from his office. What are you doing, Jeff? I'm sitting here moping. Well, put on a suit and come down here and mope. And that's exactly how I entered into the office equipment business. It was a pivotal call, a loyal friend checking up and acting, and through my entire career, Fred was a mainstay. We talked about partnering in business on a couple of occasions, and although we didn't follow through on those partnering ideas, Fred nevertheless remained loyal to me and my business interests. Vita set up our 401k program, and Fred and Carl came on several occasions to make employee presentations. We were very fortunate to have had them. I know many of you have memories of Fred as a loyal friend or colleague, a loyal mentor, an uncle, or a brother. So I met Fred in Death Valley, and we spent the last 40 years as friends. It's almost as simple as that. A friendship in which Fred demonstrated to me and my family so many acts of kindness, including many random acts of kindness. A friendship in which Fred often demonstrated remarkable caring and action for me, my family, and for many of you. And a friendship in which Fred has been loyal to me through many ups and downs, thick and thin. I'm lucky to have known him. Please join me in a brief prayer. Dear Lord Jesus, your death and resurrection provides hope for all of us, everyone. My prayer today is that in our grief, your peace, which surpasses all human understanding, and our loving memory of Fred, guard and keep us all. Amen.
Thank you, Eric, Jason, James. I thought maybe we also give you an opportunity from where you're seated, if you would like to share a memory of Fred. We will be walking around with a microphone, and if you just raise your hand, we'll bring the microphone over to you, and we'll just have an open time of sharing for a few minutes. Just raise your hand high, and then we can see you. Yeah, over there.
I met Fred when I was 5 years old, and we just moved in at 464 Santa Barbara Drive. When I was 15 years old, my father joined the Foreign Service and hauled the family, some of the smaller ones, kicking and screaming off to East Africa. So I left my home in Los Altos and found myself quite lonely. About 5 months later, I received a letter from Fred, and he was on his way. He flew all the way over to Dar es Salaam, Tanzania to visit me. We had a fantastic time, and more importantly, he showed me that somebody from Los Altos really, truly cared enough to come all the way to visit me. And then 4 years later, he did it again, which was great. Like my son said, the enormity of our loss hasn't truly been felt yet, but I think all of us will remember Fred all of our days. Thank you so much for a wonderful.
Thank you. Right over here.
Carl Hansen, you're my brother too. Glad I could be here. Some familiar faces, not so familiar faces. My name is Bob Griffin. I've had the pleasure of going to high school with Fred from a very young age. I'm not sure we have any grade school friends here, do we, Carl? If you're a grade school friend, raise your hand, because you got me beat. It's a pleasure to be here. High school friend? Grade school. We got one over here. Hope you have something to say. Grade school. Just a moment to reflect. It's been a long time, but I had a really fortunate opportunity to drop in on Fred 2 weeks ago. Carl and Eric were in Chicago, and sort of an irony in a lot of ways that I happened to drop in. Standard Fred had his phone number, and it still worked. Got a chance to say, hey, Fred, what are you up to? He goes, nothing, what are you doing? Is this God calling? So I took that as an honor. He was a part of our wedding party. My wife's still with me, Michelle. And we reflected on our recent 38th anniversary. And there was a picture of Fred with Kevin Leiter and my two brothers. So we have a really tight bond. The sad part about it is time does march on. And it was a time for reflection for me, my thoughts of where he was in our life at certain intervals. And they were really poignant and very memorable. And by the way, the hearse was green, not yellow. Yeah, Kevin's sister, Missy, is a sister, adopted sister, confirmed that it was a yellow panel truck. Green hearse. I'm not sure if the Veros are around, but the Veros were a classic part of our neighborhood gang. So I'm not going to ramble on. If anybody's interested in some of our history, I'm more than willing to take a few minutes to tell you what Fred was like with his Corvette and how miserable he made the garage at Fifi's. Right, Carl? Anyway, it was really wonderful, though, that we had tremendous experiences. So The highlight of it is that the boys in high school decided we'll take our Corvettes and travel east. So with that in mind, we jumped in our cars. Probably was one of the most memorable parts of my high school, being with Fred. Kevin, Gary Guckel, I'm not sure he's here. But seeing Fred 2 weeks ago, kind of the irony of it, bringing it all together. And I wish Carl was there, because I might even bought lunch. With that said, we developed a tremendous friendship. I'd like to say he became my partner in business at a very early age. I worked for Hansen's Acoustical Ceilings. I got fired the second day. Right, Carl? You said Fred's the boss, but I don't know who was the boss. And then the second go around, if I got it right, Carl, was Hansen's tree removal. That came first. Okay, then I got it wrong. I said, this is too much work for me. So I waited for Hansen's Acoustical Ceilings. My first day on the job, spraying acoustic ceilings. It's all toxic now, isn't it? No masks, no. With that said, I wasn't the partner then. Fred and I became partners in real estate, and it was a great venture. We had a tremendous opportunity to be a part of Tuolumne County, and my brother and myself bought Fred out. He negotiated a good deal. He stuck it to us, but that's okay. We ended up getting him in the end. Bottom line is, a lot of memories to share, but too much time has gone by, and I really, really am blessed to have had the opportunity to spend, 35, 40 minutes looking at his Mustang, reflecting a little bit on our childhood. It just was a really special moment, honestly. And take a deep breath and say that I was glad to be part of Fred's life. So it's the wake-up call. We need to spend all the time we can with quality people around us, especially our old friends. Thank you.
Any others?
Hi, my name is Kim Fleming. I've known Fred for 19 years, and he was first my colleague. I worked at Vita, and he also would come around and take me out to lunch and introduce me to new places. My tenure at Vita was really short, and I didn't realize that we would have a long friendship of 19 years. He was a great supporter. He would always call and ask me how I was doing and what I was up to, and he gave me so much advice. It was unsolicited. It was just sort of like we'd talk and have great lunches and dinners. I'd visit him at his place, and he would take us out. Even my husband went to Mexico with him in Cabo. That was one of the first places that he introduces us to. I'm going to keep this really short and simple, but the hardest thing for me was I just saw Fred a couple weeks ago. Like I said, I saw him every year, several times a year. We'd go to lunch, and he wanted to see how I was doing, and he was so tickled by the fact that we had just gave birth to our daughter, Audrey, and he really wanted to see her, and he wanted to meet her. So he came to our house just 2 weeks ago to meet Audrey, and he would laugh the whole time because she smiled at him the whole time that he was enjoying brunch at our house. And when he first walked through our door, I had said to him, Fred, I'm sorry, but I have a little dog, and my dog barks at really tall people. And he said, oh, your ferocious dog, your dog is so mean. But the funny thing is, my dog actually loved Fred. At brunch, he was eating breakfast, and our dog lay on the floor, and and our dog let him rub his belly, and the whole time Audrey smiled at him, and he thought it was the funniest thing in the world. And we were planning our trip to Puerto Vallarta. We were going to celebrate Audrey's first birthday in April. And he put it on the calendar, and he even just sent me an email just right before his birthday and said, Kim, don't forget, we're going to plan Audrey's birthday, okay? And we're going to celebrate it in Puerto Vallarta. And I wished him a happy birthday. I think the hardest thing for me is that he was very happy. That day was a beautiful day. He drove from his house in his Mustang, and he was so happy to be able to drive in the sun and come to our house in San Francisco, and the blue skies were out. It's very rare in our neck of the woods in San Francisco where the sun comes out. And I said to him, thanks, Fred, for bringing the sun to our neighborhood. And he loved it. He said, thanks for having me. And I literally said, have a happy birthday, and we'll talk when you get back. So I was devastated when I heard that he celebrated his birthday and is no longer with us today. So, but I just wanted to leave with that last thought. The last memory that I have of Fred is that he was happy. He smiled, and he really was enjoying that Mustang and that drive and everything he had in life. He even talked about the next chapter in his life. And so the only way that I can deal with this is to know that he had many experiences, and he was always smiling. And that's what he left me with a smile when he left my door.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll take just one more, and then we'll have opportunity during the reception to share our personal stories with one another. There was a hand back up there. Yeah.
Hi, so my name's Ben, and I worked for Fred for actually quite a while. And when I was 19, I got this job with him up at his house. And I'm sorry, I'm not a very good public speaker, and I don't want to butcher this story. But basically, you know, he had this amazing presence about him. And, you know, I was kind of young, and I was always kind of intimidated by the guy. So I got this job up at his house, and I was basically like cutting down trees. And after about 3 months of time, you know, I'd kind of heard about this sort of like this infamous airplane. And one day I was eating lunch. You know, I would work up there alone, and I heard this noise. Like he called me, and I heard this noise, like sort of in the background of his phone. And I jokingly said, "Fred, like, what are you in, an airplane?" And he said, "Ben, I'm 5,000 feet above you right now, and I have eyes in the sky." And so I look up, and I hear this. There is this airplane, and I'm like, you know, I can't believe this, Fred. Like, there's no way you're in this airplane. And he goes, no. Look up in the sky. That airplane is going to do a 180 right now. And he does a 180 completely right above, this is right above his own house up in Saratoga, and all of a sudden I realized my boss has a U-2 spy plane, and he will swoop down out of the sky at any moment and say, "Why aren't you working?" And so, you know, the drive to get up to Fred's is about an hour up and to get back down. So it left for really a lot of time of thought of, you know, like this, it just blew my mind, you know, like that he could use an airplane to sort of spy on your, not even really spy, but just, so anyways, like the whole time I was working up there, I always was like, you know, oh, is he gonna call? Like, I want to make sure I'm like not under a tree or anything. And so anyways, you know, I ended up working for him then at Vita, and I really got to know the guy really well. And I remember years later we were flying in his airplane, and I brought this up, and he goes, "Ben, look out the window." And he goes, "You can't see anything on the floor at all. You cannot see the ground at all. If I didn't think you were working, I would have just stayed home." So, anyways, you know, Fred had an amazing sense of humor that I don't think a lot of people saw, and so, you know, it was really a pleasure working with him or for him, and I really learned a lot, and you know, I just wanted to say, you know, it was, you know, it wasn't all. I guess I don't really know how to say it, but it was really a good experience. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, we'll have more opportunities to share with one another in the reception following the service. But at this time, I want to invite Jenny and AJ Hansen, they're the nieces of Fred, to share a couple gifts of poem with us.
To the living,
I am one.
to the sorrowful,
I will never return.
to the angry,
I was cheated.
but to the happy,
I am at peace.
and to the faithful,
I have never left. I cannot speak.
but I can listen,
I cannot be seen.
but I can be heard.
So as you stand upon a shore, gazing at a beautiful sea,
As you look upon a flower and admire its simplicity,
remember me,
remember me in your heart,
your thoughts and your memories,
of the times we loved,
the times we cried,
the times we fought.
the times we laughed.
For if you always think of me,
I will never have gone.
And the second poem is one that I wrote after I broke down in the library on Monday night. So we'll see if we can get through this. It's called One More. Just one more time, because this foreverness is too real. Just one more time, once more, and I'll be fine. Let me look into your eyes and hear your hearty laugh. Let me touch your freckled skin and see your hidden grin. Let me hear you say my name, the one only you called me. Just give us one more chance to see the clouds firsthand. Please won't you give me just one more time to see you and hear you, to hug and be near you. Give us one more time to soak up the sun and sink our toes in the sand, margaritas in hand. Just give us one more time to embrace your sarcasm that is now a part of me and Lord knows always will be. Just give me one more time to make sure that I know that you know that I do really, truly love you.
Thank you, Jenny and AJ. And so we're going to be given this one more time right now as I invite you in a moment of personal reflection. I understand that Fred was a huge fan of Scott Joplin, and we're blessed to have Pastor Dirk DeMonte play a piece called Solace, which means consolation, that with this one more time of reflection, that the memories of Fred, the love of Fred, would console our hearts. So would you take a moment in the quiet of your own heart just to reflect? Will you pray with me? And God, we give you great thanks for all of these witnesses, for all these lives that have been touched and blessed, informed and shaped and helped by the life of this precious, precious person, Fred Hansen. We offer him up to you while we ask for your Spirit and your love to bring comfort, healing, and indeed the peace that surpasses all understanding. And as you bring us together as a community of love and sharing this afternoon, may this very fellowship bless us all. For we pray all this in your name. Amen. And we're concluding the service with a song that I think means so much to the Hansen family and to Fred. A Bridge Over Troubled Waters. We're going to kind of do this in a mass karaoke style. And we're going to invite you to sing this all together as we look on the screens. If you know it well, bust it out. And this is kind of our tribute to a life that fought hard despite all the troubles and the challenges, and a life that certainly fought for others as well. Amen. Let's sing together. On behalf of the Hansen family, we are so grateful for your presence today to come and celebrate the life of this beautiful, beautiful person. We have an opportunity to continue that celebration following the service. Pretty much if you follow the crowd in that direction, you'll see a building by the parking lot on the left called Creekside Center. And there is an amazing, amazing reception set up. Basically, they've converted that building into Mexico, literally. So that's one of the themes. And we're going to be able to share our own stories with one another and continue to celebrate Fred. Also, as part of the celebration, the family is making available to those who wish a physical remembrance, a keepsake of Fred. Our senior pastor, Mark Bowinkle, who is not only the pastor of this church, but also an amazing potter, has created these votive candle holders in which some of Fred's remains have been added. And so if you would like one, there are forms, I believe, somewhere available that you can fill out, and these candle holders will be sent out to you. And now may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his wonderful face to shine upon you. And may God grant you the peace that surpasses all understanding and the healing of your broken hearts as we continue to share in memories and the love that overflows in this place. Amen.